Hello, everyone, and welcome to this month's LinkedIn Live Tools of the Trade Best Investigator and Auditor Hacks. If you have any questions throughout the webinar, please type them in the chat. Rebecca and I will respond at the end of the webinar with any questions. My name is Jessica Rodriguez, and I am a Special Investigations Unit Investigator with Advise. I have been with Advise for a year and a half now. Prior to that, I worked for the Texas Attorney General's Office for the Medicaid Fraud Control Unit. Prior to that, I was working in property tax with the Comptroller's Office. I received my degree in finance. While I was working in college, I was actually a medical biller for HCA. So that's kind of how I started in this industry. The AG's office saw that I had experience with data. I was a data analyst at the Comptrollers, and I had billing experience. So that's kind of how I started with this industry. And Rebecca, if you want to introduce yourself.
Absolutely. I'm Rebecca. I am working with the auditing team in the Advises SIU unit. And I actually got into auditing in a bit of a roundabout way. I started my career in education. I worked in New York City schools, worked with students with autism and emotional behavioral disorders. And at the same time, I was going to the house to provide services. And I received a lot of the same questions from my families is how can we get different services for our children? What services can really be provided? How can we make sure that everything is covered? Which led to a lot of research on my end. And I stumbled into the world of regulations and laws and coding and sorting through it all, I became really interested in it. And when COVID hit, I actually decided to go back to school to get my coding certification. I spent a few years working with a business associate for some of the New York hospitals. And we ended up working denial cases and coding cases, trying to ensure that decisions were reversed in a lot of the appeals process. And I ended up starting at Advise, actually back as an educator. Because of my background, they asked me to assist and teach nurses who wanted to get their CPC, their coding certifications. And so we did a boot camp, which led to me becoming full-time on the auditing team.
Very interesting how we all kind of landed into healthcare fraud, waste, and abuse. I have met very little people that, have said, oh, I want to be an auditor or an investigator with healthcare fraud, waste, and abuse. I think we all just kind of land here, whether it be just our past experiences, or maybe we just, there are some folks out there that did want to be investigators or auditors working with, Medicaid fraud, waste, and abuse. But it's very interesting to hear your background with education, especially because here at Advise, we definitely, I think one of our main missions is to educate our providers, our clients, and the providers as well. I think that has been from anywhere I've worked, that has been a very fulfilling aspect of my job is to educate, uh, and it coincides very well with your past experience.
It definitely does. I sometimes still feel like an educator in some ways. It's actually really empowering that we are able to work with our clients and our providers so closely in that realm of educating them. It's not as though we're the big bad investigators coming to find everything that you did wrong, and I'm not marking your paper and putting red lines on everything and leaving only you did this wrong, you did that wrong, but we also provide background. We provide links of where all of our information came from. We provide the reason in which something may have turned out a certain way and really work with our clients and our providers and hoping to educate them so that going forward, they know what the current rules and regulations and coding guidelines are to ensure that they're passing when something comes our way.
Right. I know for the investigators, we meet with the plans monthly, and that gives us an opportunity to go over our cases that we have with them and also share any updates with the ever evolving healthcare industry with rules and regulations. Uh, I know at Advise, they meet with the plans quarterly and they offer training on regulations and policies and such. Um, but that also leads me to my next point is also working with you guys. Uh, I really enjoy working with the auditors on our team. You guys have so much knowledge. We all have different backgrounds, which makes us for a very dynamic team. We all bring something to the table. Would you say that's your experience working with investigators? Is it a little different working with investigators, being
It's
an
really,
educator?
it's really interesting because primarily on our team, each and every one of us has a specialty, has a background in which we come to. So when we're speaking regarding collaboration, it is one of our strengths. On the auditing side of things, I know that when I don't know something, when I come across a case that I may have never seen before or only touched once or twice, I know that I can turn to someone on my team and be like, you've done this, this is your specialty. Can you give me an idea of which way to go? Or can you guide me towards where I can find these rules and regulations so that I can give the proper information to our clients? And on a more wider scope than that, it's really interesting when we work with you guys because as the investigative team, we're not just thinking as coders. I'm not looking through each file and just being like, okay, this code matches with this code, or this code doesn't follow this guideline, so it's incorrect. We're taking a look at the bigger picture and we're going through all the documentation to make sure that it meets New York State. I work mostly New York State cases. And so we're going through to make sure that it meets either New York State regulation or CMS regulation or the plan regulations. And we're thinking in sort of a different mindset. And I love learning from you guys how you guys take a look at all the data and analyze it so that we're able to sort of work cohesively to make sure that the investigative process goes as smoothly as possible.
Right. So, my understanding is that a big part of your responsibility is research, right? It's your audit starts with research.
Yes. So when the audit comes from you guys, or when the information comes to you guys and we begin our audit, depending on the case, it might be something that I've done a bunch of times or I have great background in. Say that we're working New York State podiatry case, or we're working New York State DME case, or what have you. Depending on what the background is, you either have a whole bunch of information that you know off the top of your head, and you go and you triple check the information to make sure that it is still current, that there's been no updates to it, because as you stated before, healthcare is ever changing. And we might go to take a look and you will see the little, web browser say like, sorry, we're updating our rules and regulations at the moment. Or it could be a case where it could take a full day or a day and a half to find out all the little nuances and details that are in the law. Depends on what type of case it is. It could be a matter of, let me just triple check and make sure I know my stuff. It could be, oh, this is from 2 years revised. And so we have to make sure that, say that we're looking at an audit from 2021, we're using the 2021 rules and regulations. It can't exactly judge them based off of different sets of standards. And we're really fortunate actually working in the New York state plans because they're so thorough with their rules and regulations. They use it through eMed New York, and they break it down per specialty, per guideline, and everything is actually laid out really nicely for the New York state plans, which makes our research a little bit more smooth. Usually we have to go to 2 or 3 different cases if we're looking at something that isn't really specific, but it's one of the tools that are super helpful for New York state plans.
Right. I did, I working with you guys. I really enjoy reading your reports. They are filled with a lot of information. Um, it calls for a well-rounded case. We're able to defend not, your work, but when we're meeting with the providers, we're able to provide them with that educational portion of the report. Um, so something that investigators, I've learned as being an investigator is, we emphasize the importance of educating our provider, but also I have to make the effort to educate myself, because healthcare is always changing, and not only with rules and regulation, but also working with the data efficiently, um, and upholding that integrity of the data. So, yeah, education is definitely a, a big part of our foundation, I feel like, for our team.
What I really like you touching upon is talking about like constantly educating yourself using your data analytics. What I really appreciate about working at Advise is how we work so collaboratively together. It's not just a microcosm of the investigator unit and the auditor unit, but it's the fact that we come together throughout the whole process. So before I really appreciate that before an actual audit begins, that we actually have that conversation of, hey, what do you think of this? Or is there something that you notice? Sometimes I do get a case and there's 300 lines on it, 300 accounts that I have to look through, and I could reach the first 10. And I'll turn around to the investigator and I'll say, hey, I noticed that this is a trend with the first 10, the first 20, however many, depending on the case. Before the audit comes and we're going to have a 0% success rate, are you able to reach out to the provider to make sure they have this information? And a lot of times they do. They just don't realize that it should have been sent along with everything.
Right. Yes. Going forward, something that we just started with our team is the buddy system, right? So Rebecca's my buddy, and if I have any questions, I can reach out to her, and it can be any case, not just a case that she's auditing. But I am really excited about that. I'm not going to say program, but that new system that we have going on, because I really want to invite, for example, you to look at the data that I am looking at before I even open up a case, to make sure that, it's going to be worth our time, worth the plan's time. Um, and I hope that, if you have any questions with the data, I'm more than happy to go over it. As investigators, we definitely try to keep up with ways to efficiently data mine, or clean up our data or present our data. That's something that I'm pretty big on, is being able to showcase what I'm looking at within the data, because we can have thousands of claim lines, and our time frames, they range from 1 year to 4 years. It just depends on the provider and how much data we have. So that's something that I'm going to utilize in the future, is definitely pulling you to look at a case before I even open it, to see if, if you're seeing something that's worth opening, or maybe there's something that I'm missing. I think that that is also going to help us uh, open up well-rounded cases, and it's going to be worth the time, right?
Yes, that open line of communication, the ideas of what's missing, or I'm looking at this information. Can you double check because I have this feeling that something's not right with it? And we always get it. And so when one of those instances come up and I reach out to you and I'm just like, hey Jessica, this are we missing information? Can you check with the provider? Can you check to see if there's anything that, and sometimes they have it and sometimes they don't, but being able to discuss throughout the whole process has really streamlined and made our work a little bit more efficient, has improved the whole entire process and what we can give to our clients. You mentioned a lot before about your, ability in data analytics and providing everything, and that organization and information helps us so much. And I am really enjoying learning a lot more about how you guys do that. Because when we receive the information, it's not just you dump it on our desk and say, here you go, have a nice day. It's really great that we're able to circle back around, and when something doesn't make sense or when something needs to be clarified, why are we looking at this case if I am opening up a case and I'm just going, oh, you guys mentioned like 3 or 4 issues that you want us to investigate. Is there a primary focus, or am I looking at every single line that's been provided? And usually we're able to make a clear focus going forward. It also is really nice when we get to an appeal process, because sometimes they send over so much information and you guys are able to organize it and you guys are able to collect like what it is that we need to see in a format that is not completely overwhelming. And I'm always blown away because I'm learning how to do all this through your team also. And while I'm, not just a coder, what is the word you used before?
Oh yeah, they call you guys auditors.
I will stumble over that word to the end of time.
It's a great term. I think it's very fitting.
Uh, it's it's really it's really great having that collaboration there, because it's something that we've aspired for, and it has not only started to decrease some of the denials that we've been getting, it has also helped in our education for our clients. I know that sometimes they turn and they look and they see how collaborative we are, and not that we're in our own little, separate spheres, and they see how well we work together, which has inspired some of our clients to start thinking that way as well.
Right. I think that they see that we tackle each case together. It's the way one of my managers explained it to me, is that we're not on separate islands. Especially working remotely, it could kind of feel that way. But I definitely don't feel like that at Advise. I feel like we all are so excited to help each other and learn from each other, because we do have a very dynamic team. I mean, I came from property tax, and you were an educator working with little ones, and we all bring something to the table. And with the whole appeals process, that also gives me a chance to learn more about a certain CPT code, or rules and regs that I just wasn't aware of. Because one of the things that I definitely like try to do as an investigator is to, and I think I mentioned this, is just learning more schemes and educating myself. And that whole appeal process, it can be a pain, yes, of course, but I see it in a more positive light, that, okay, well, I get to see, how to defend my case more. And I think that working with you guys has really helped me in that process, is defending our cases, right? I mean, the appeals process can be tough, but it gives me an opportunity to learn more about a case and defend our case. because that honestly made me kind of nervous as an auditor was, I knew the rules and the regs, but when they would start with the appeals process, I think I struggled. We don't they don't have to put this in, but I'm just like talking right now. It's been nice to learn from you guys how to defend our work because I feel like you guys are so educated and you guys know your rules and regs. And I truly, truly mean that. You guys are phenomenal.
It's I just think it's nice on the whole. I think one of the nicest parts about working on such a great team at Advise, that it has so much collaboration, isn't just that we are out to come do our 9 to 5 job, out to get, you know, slap you on the nose with the newspaper. If you've done this wrong, you've done that wrong. We're not sticking a band-aid on anything and just being like, fix it because this is wrong. We're learning from ourselves, from our teams, from each other's teams, and I think that really shows in the way that we are working with our clients and the way that we are educating them because we're thinking in such broad strokes and we're just set on a team with a certain focus. And I think that's what really makes us pretty successful.
Right. I agree. Education is a very strong foundation. I truly feel like that is one of the main missions of our team is to educate the providers and the payers. Um, and education is it's important all around when you're investigating because in when you're dealing with cases, I've learned in the last 3 years that I've been in this industry is that it's not always cyclical. Investigations are fluid. Um, because of the ever-changing landscape, right? So, what has been, I feel like, one of the tools and hacks for me is working with data more efficiently. What about you as an auditor working with so much paperwork? I mean, you guys get hundreds of pages of medical records.
We definitely do, and that is something I've definitely learned to work with more efficiently from you guys and how you organize your data. I've learned so much, even from the basics. When you think say for example, Microsoft Excel, you know, you can plug in a formula, but I've especially coming from the classroom, I've learned how to go beyond what I knew then in just organizing a lot of our data and information and being able to, flip between how are we going to organize this and make it presentable for our clients versus look at all this information that we have.
Right.
We are pretty fortunate when it comes to tools to have uh, a program called Codify. And it's an online tool and it is able to help us navigate the different like CPT codes and diagnosis codes and the crossroads to get to each other. It lays out all of the rules and regulations that pertain to each code. You can guide it through certain time frames. So if you were looking at an account that came from 2, 3 years ago, you can set it to that time frame's account and all the rules and regulations that pertain to each code, if the code existed, if it didn't exist, and all the limitations that came with it, you'd be able to have it at your fingertips. It's been one of the nicer tools to have to assist with all that data.
Right. Yeah. Our programs are very important. Um, in working cases efficiently. I would have to agree with that. Um, One of the things that I would like to do in the future is uh, utilize the buddy system and bringing Rebecca, at the beginning of my cases. Uh, Another thing too is just brushing up on my data analytics skills. One of the cool things about our dynamic team is that we all come from different backgrounds and some of us are really, really good with Excel. Some of us are really good with Access and creating databases, which is, makes working with large data sets super important. Um, and I believe some of the auditors have expressed an interest in learning some data analytics systems. And I hope that as we grow as a company and as a team, we'll be able to use, cooler programs and be able to manipulate the data and present it as well. I think that, a lot of clients and just internally as well, it's nice to see data um, in a different format than a huge spreadsheet, right? Like, I really want to start working more with being able to present our data like in graphs and charts, etc. And I know the auditors have expressed an interest in learning all those things.
Absolutely. That is something I don't have a whole good background in. And one thing that I think really makes our team super successful is our passion and how much we're willing to learn and how much we're willing to work for our clients to make sure that the information is presentable to us as well as them. And I think it's one of the things that make us really successful. We are about to run out of time. I know everyone is on their lunch break right now, so I'm going to give you guys a little bit more time to wrap up lunch, your tea or your coffee. Do you have anything you'd like to close off with, Jessica?
I guess I'm just very grateful to be working with such a dynamic team. It's been a pleasure working with the auditors. And thank you for everyone tuning in. You can catch any of the prior LinkedIn webinars and OIG roundtable events on Spotify and YouTube. And just a reminder, you could sign up for the Advise newsletter on the Advise website. And that's
Thank
all
you
I
guys
have.
so much for joining us.
Thank you. Have a good lunch. Have a good day.
Bye, guys.
Bye.